So I'm here today talking with my daughter Azore, and she's going to share with us some of the things that she experienced in being in a blended family. So Azore, share with me and our audience some of the things that you experienced in being in a blended family and what it was like for you being in a intact family where your parents ends up divorcing after 16 years. You were 16 years old, almost 17 when we divorced, and then having to transition from that to now being in a blended family, a home with your mother, a stepfather, and having a younger sibling.
It was definitely easy at the beginning, I would say. Like, it started off, like, fine when, like, the dating process, but then as, like, different things started to transpire, it was a little bit more challenging, so it definitely, like, swayed how I felt.
Okay, so when you say the dating, you mean like when he and I were dating, it was easier for you.
Yeah, it wasn't, like, it really didn't, like, faze me. It was just normal.
Right.
Because, like, we already knew that our parents are divorced, and of course, like, you want your parents together, but, like, I mean, at that point, like, I felt like I accepted it, so it was easy. Like, this person did nothing, but then when things started to transpire, it was just like your opinions and stuff started to shift.
Okay, so what do you think transpired? Like, when we were in the dating phase and you were okay with the relationship, you were okay with us dating, when you found out that we were going to get married and then we got married, what do you feel like changed for you as far as how you saw the entire dynamic?
Well, at that point, when you are about to get married, I felt like it probably should have been, like, slowed down a little bit, just with everything that was going on. I felt like it could have been more beneficial to happen, like, later.
Okay.
And then I feel like there should have been more, like, respect happening, so things weren't going, so things would go right and not, like, left.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Okay, and so when you say you think that maybe we should have done it later because of things that were transpiring, explain that. Like, what do you mean about the things that transpired? Because in my mind, I don't know that waiting a little longer would have changed the dynamic. But in your mind, you see maybe if we had waited a little longer. So what was it within that waiting time that you felt like should have changed or should have been resolved or should have been worked on before the marriage?
Well, when I say waiting, I mean when things started to transpire, like, not have got married. Were y'all married then?
What do you mean?
No, I don't think so. Like when it, like, involved, like, my dad and
Okay.
like and then come into your new marriage, like, with him, like, things are starting to happen. So, like, I think one that maybe a conversation, if my father was applicable enough to, like, have that conversation, like, that should have happened before the marriage, and maybe it would have went a little bit smoother, or, like, at least in my mind, because when I think of, like, for instance, if I was about to get remarried, I would want, like, the father of, like, my children, if I had kids with someone else, to just sit down with this new husband.
Okay.
And meet them. Like, I'm not saying you need his approval or anything, because you don't.
Right.
But I'm saying since you guys have kids, like, that's
correct.
And since you know kind of who you're dealing with also.
Right.
I think that would have been helpful as well. Of course, like, both of the men to be respectful for each other. And then, but since that didn't happen, like, I felt like it should have just, like, waited a little bit to kind of, like, fill out the waters amongst everyone, so it wasn't so much drama going on.
Right.
Because that's what I feel like messed up, like, everything. The
Okay,
things
so
that transpired.
I understand. Okay, so what you're essentially saying is you feel like there should have been a conversation that had been had between your father and your stepfather prior to us making the decision to get married, because I had been in a marriage with him for 16 years, had children with him, and you felt like they should have sat down and had a conversation before we got married, before we made a decision to get married, because you feel like a lot of the high conflict that occurred between the two of them would not have occurred had we done that.
Yeah, I don't think so, because I mean, I'm sure you won't care me saying this coming from my dad's mouth. It was the respect thing. Like, I don't think that it was there. Okay. So that's what I do think, that looking back, I'm like, okay, maybe that should have happened.
Okay.
And then, you know, us got more acquainted with him and, like, his family, and then, like, you guys get married.
Right. I understand that. Because I know that myself and your father did have that conversation that we would sit down and allow each other to meet the mate if we were going to get remarried. And I didn't hold on up to that end of the bargain because, there was a lot of high conflict between your father and I. So I felt like this isn't going to help what's going on between he and I. So I felt like, okay, well, I don't really need to hold up to that end of the bargain. And maybe you're right. Maybe had I done that, maybe there would have been an easier transition for the two of them to handle the new situation of him being involved in your life, him, being a part of the family, your stepfather being a part of the family, and him being adjusted to that. Maybe it would have lowered the high conflict that was occurring. So I appreciate you sharing that because I never knew that was your thought process about that. So.
I mean, I think now as I'm getting older and I'm like thinking of like marrying someone, and I'm like looking at my situation, I'm like, okay, like what could I do differently, or what things that I could do or shouldn't do. Right.
I understand that. And so when you think about the dynamic and all the different things that we went through early on, what kind of impact did that have on you? Like what did that make you feel about me? What did it make you feel about your father? What did it make you feel about your stepfather? Because honestly, it wasn't an easy transition for you guys. We went to therapy, we were trying to help you guys deal with the process. And I remember us making the decision to say therapy even before we had gotten married. We were doing the therapy together so that you all could get to, and remember that first session that we had that didn't go very well. And then after that, we started having sessions where it was just us, and then your stepfather was a part of that before we got married to try to help us understand, okay, how are we going to operate as a blended family? And so you were going through some things then, all of you were going through some things and trying to understand. So what was going on in your head, your mind, emotionally, and dealing with all the different things that were going on in the high conflict situation, dealing with transitioning to having a stepfather in the home, no longer just taking direction from your mother, but now two people, and one of the people not being your biological father. What was going on in your mind and your heart and your emotions during that time?
I feel like it was a little mixed emotions. Like sometimes it was fine, sometimes it wasn't. Because I felt like on one hand, like I didn't really get to know like the person you were marrying as I thought I should. Because to me, like my dad, like he was never really like a father figure like how I envisioned how I would want a father to be. So I was like, oh well, maybe this new person would not feel that, but show that to me, and I didn't feel like that was happening how I envisioned. Okay. So like it was like emotions like that, and then also okay, of course, like I'm happy for my mom since she's just like moving on. Right. And then also, then I have my dad. He feels disrespected, and you know how he feels. So it was a lot of like mixed emotions. And then now that I'm older, I feel like it just kind of swayed how I feel about relationships a lot and men a lot. So,
yeah. And so when you say that you wasn't necessarily expecting your stepfather to fill your father's role, but you had certain expectations that you thought that he was going to do, are you saying that there were things that he didn't do that you was expecting or you wish he had have done?
Well, like for me, like when I say that, when I say not for my father's role, because no one can do that. I think, for instance, like if you have a father that passes away, like and he's not there anymore, and then your mother remarries, like you're gonna expect him to be like your dad. Yes. And so that's kind of what I had in my head. My dad, he's not passed away. He's not really involved. Right. Like really at all. Like so. I was expecting, okay, I know he's not my biological dad, but okay, well then maybe I can still like get what I was like lacking growing up, like from that, because I really don't like that saying, oh, he's never gonna fill that role, because I don't think it's really true, because it happens all the time. I agree. Like, your father can die or be in and out, but if you have another father figure, it's not, of course you're going to fill that void because your real father's not there, but I feel that person can definitely make up for a lot that your real father didn't do.
He and I think you bring a good point, because he would never fill the role of being your biological father, but like you said, he could meet some of those needs that you're lacking
I feel like
in
all
your,
the needs, really, the only
right.
need that I feel like you really can is the fact I didn't birth you. Like,
It's-
because it happens all
right.
the time. Like,
Okay.
the dad could be out your life at 2, and
Mhm.
you grow up with living with this new person, and really it's your stepdad, but of course you don't call him that.
Right.
Because he's been like a dad to you.
Right. I understand that. Yeah, I understand that. So you had these expectations that you thought, and because, and I think what happens a lot of times, and even in our situation, I think there was fear. Like, there's this fear I think that adults have as being that step parent sometimes, where they're uneasy about, okay, what should I do? What shouldn't I do? Is it okay